Hi, I'm Vanessa, and I'm a comic book artist. I work for Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, Boom.
Jeff Dekal, cover artist, work for Marvel. I'm doing Iron Fist, Kingpin, She-Hulk, Journey into Mystery. Those are a few titles I did.
How you doing? I'm Darryl McDaniels. I am the publisher of DMC Comics, which means Darryl Makes Comics. And I started this comic book company 3 years ago because before hip-hop, before music, before rock and roll, before I got on a microphone, all I did as a kid was read, collect, and draw comics. So now I'm actually living my childhood dream as an adult that's really a kid.
I'm gonna be short over here.
Thanks so much. I'm Danielle Otrakji. I'm a comic book artist, and I've done work for Image Comics.
I'm Jeremy Whitley. I'm now exceptionally short up here, which I'm not used to. I'm a comic book writer. I write and created the series Princeless from Action Lab Comics. I also write for My Little Pony and Marvel Comics on a variety of things, including the Unstoppable Wasp, which is currently ongoing.
All right, we're going to start right away with questions from you guys. We'll switch the mics around. They didn't give us enough mics. Yes, if you have questions, hands up and two people will approach you. If not, I will come up with questions. Keep that in your mind. You, sir. My lovely assistant will go over there.
For DMC, if there's like younger people that write comics that are, specifically want to work with you,
Yes.
particularly, how can we get in contact with you?
Eric, where's my manager, Eric? I'll give you that information. That's a good question. When we created Darryl Makes Comics, I didn't actually want to do a comic book. This comic book came about because I actually went to a music meeting. And I was meeting with Riggs Morales, who was Eminem's right-hand man at Shady Records during the rise of that great empire. And when I sat down for this music meeting, Riggs was like, yo, I'm usually very professional, I never fan out. And he used these words. But DMC, man, you was like my superhero, man, the way you looked and the way you rhymed and all that. And he just asked me, what was it like when I was a kid? And I was like, well, I went to Catholic school my whole life, and I was a straight-A student, always on the honor roll, and all I did was read and draw comic books. And Rick said, comic books? I was like, yeah, comic books. He said, comic books? I said, yeah, comic books. So we sat there for like 3 hours and we talked about comic books. And I was a huge Marvel guy, because Marvel was New York City to me. And I was one of those kids. I went to Catholic school. I got bullied, teased, and picked on and all that. And I was one of those kids that my mother was like, when that street light comes on, you have your ass in this house. So I was one of those kids. So, of course, I had to entertain myself, and I had to have an imagination. So Marvel comic books was like the perfect existence for me. It educated me, taught me to read, took me on incredible experiences and stuff. So I told that to Riggs, and he was like, damn, wow, I never knew that. So he said, you should do a comic book. And I said, I don't want to do a comic book. And he said, why not? And I said, I don't want to be another rapper thinking just because I got a hit record, I could do everything. Because rappers and hip-hop have a habit of ruining everything. So I didn't want my fellow geeks and nerds mad at my ass for messing up comic book genre. But Riggs said, yo, you can do everything with this comic book and more that you've always done with your music. Inspire, motivate, and educate people. And I said, okay, I'll do it, but as long as we do this comic book, it's got to be a tribute and a celebration of what makes all comic books from every generation incredible. And another thing I want to do is, like what I did with music, I'm 53 years old, so from 53 to 3, if that's possible, I want to give all artists, writers, inkers, pencilers, colorists, an opportunity to have their work, their art, and their gift in a comic book. I don't believe a 15-year-old kid who is incredible now should have to wait till he graduates college and have to wait to submit his portfolio and have to go through all that kids are in here, that weak protocol. If you have a gift now, with my company, if you 15 and you great, male, female, Asian, Muslim, whatever you are, you can draw my book. And also, 53 and older. There's dudes 53 to 70 to 80 to 90 who should have had a chance to work with Marvel and DC but never had that chance. I want to give them that opportunity. And our book will always have one artist and writer who has currently or who has worked with Marvel, DC, Image, or whatever, so that it's legitimate to the culture. Oh, wow, look who they got drawn and look who they got writing. But each issue has 4 to 5 different artists. Among the artists that's known and famous and legendary, there's those other artists who we want to give a chance. So before we leave, Eric, we got to give him the information so they could submit and be down with this.
Also, I think the first time I heard about it, I think you were either on the Combat Jack show.
Yes, Combat Jack, yeah.
And I sat in my car, listened to the whole, that whole program.
Yeah, the reason why I'm so devastating on the mic is because of comic books.
Okay. This one I'll do for everybody. We'll start at your end and we'll work our way down. What initially attracted you to the comic field? Why this and not something else? Why not writing prose novels or drawing portraits? Why are you in comics?
I like it because drawing. I mean, I like drawing, but I like drawing in sequence. I like drawing action. I like drawing movement in the figures. I like telling a story. That's why I make comics. That's what attracted me to it. Just the drawing part of it.
I mean, I've thought about that a lot too. Like, why does somebody like sports versus art or whatever? I feel like it's something inside you that you're born with. But for me, there's so much that happens in comics that you can't see, you can't go outside and see. So it's like if I'm gonna see something mundane or everyday, you could go do that anywhere. But in a comic, you know, seeing superheroes fight and powers and all that stuff, you can't see that anywhere in the regular world. So comics had that, and I thought that's super awesome. So I guess that's it.
I guess for me, comics because of reading. Because I was one of those kids that hated the summer vacation, and all the kids in Hollis in the hood thought I was weird because I couldn't understand, why do I have to be out of school from June all the way to September? And all the kids thought that was weird. But I just loved to read history and science and math. So for me, comic books, the appeal was having a chance to be able to read every time. And with the art, all I did as a kid was draw, and a lot of artists tell me that, like, I started with stick figures, and the stick figure with the horns and the cape, you know, the scraggly cape was Batman, and the stick figure with the S on it. But then I evolved up to, what got me excited about the comic book art was tracing paper. Because if you use tracing paper, you could draw the comic book cover exactly the way it is. But by I started with second grade, third grade. By the end of third grade, I realized I didn't need the tracing paper no more. So for me, it was the reading and the educational, linguistic aspect of it combined with the drawing.
I guess for me, when I was young, my dad introduced me to a lot of comics. They're French comics, but they, every time I would read them, it felt like I was watching a movie, or it was like a really incredible feeling when I closed the book and felt like, yeah, so something about visual storytelling, and I always knew that I wanted to illustrate and tell stories. I went into animation thinking that that was the path for me, but realized that comics was definitely more the thing for me. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I grew up with, like, my dad is a nerd too, so I grew up on Spider-Man and X-Men, and I think, you know, X-Men in particular is one of those where, like, kind of everybody sees themselves in, like, their own struggles, and, you know, it was just, you know, I found them really relatable. You know, I was, I mean, this is maybe even more Spider-Man. You know, I was a poor kid who, you know, like, this poor little fat kid I was never cool. I've never been a cool kid. And, like, seeing, like, yeah, these characters struggle and, like, come out on top and be cool, like, it's always kind of what I looked up to. And I, you know, like Darryl was saying, I love to read. And so, you know, it was always hitting up these things. And then, you know, I went to school for creative writing, and in college, especially where I went at UNC, they take creative writing very seriously, which means you don't get to write anything fun. You don't do fantasy or sci-fi or anything. They call it genre fiction, and they want you to write very serious literature. And by the time I got done with that program, I was like, yeah, this is not what I want to write. This is no fun. I want to write stuff that I enjoy, the stuff that I want to read. And I think that's been sort of my guiding tenet in what I've done in comics is I write stuff I want to read and stuff I want to share with, especially my daughters, because I have a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old. I think Princeless spawned out of I want my daughter to be able to see a young woman that looks like herself in comics. She's a Adrian, the main character in that, is a princess. She's a young woman of color, and she's she's the hero of that book. She's not waiting around for some dude to save her, and that was the thing that I wanted to have that didn't exist when I started. So, that's sort of what I keep doing is the next thing that I want to read or share.
That's awesome. Is there a particular story, this again for everybody, that when you were a kid reading comics, that you wanted to give that same feeling to somebody else? For me, the reason I started writing at all in my own books is the Judas contract. I wanted to make someone cry like they made me cry in that story. Is there a story like that that really affects you emotionally, and you want to try to do something similar, or at least portray that feeling to somebody else?
I'm going for the images. That's what I go for. What they make me feel. I guess the work by Mobius would be it. That's it. Yeah. I mean, just those images, the atmosphere, just the design on his work is what.
I consider myself more of an illustrator than a comic book artist. So again, images, really emotional images. But as far as a story, The Matrix just comes to mind. That's my favorite movie story ever. Just making you question everything. Everything that you think is real and right, or in societal norms and all that stuff. I mean, that movie just made everything questionable, so anytime a story does that, it makes something that you see every day that you just shrug off as totally normal and regular, just makes you question it. It could be something else.
I think for me, what happened was I was into comic books, and comic books did two things for me. It made me a good student because I was reading every day, and I'm from a generation where the educators were, the kids shouldn't be reading comic books. Take the comic books from the kids. They should be reading their textbooks and their workbooks, which is true. But they overlooked the fact that I was reading every day made me an excellent student. So for me, comic books was all about, it sounds crazy, but it's true, imagination and creation that actually manifests itself in this universe. And what I mean by that was, when I was in high school, or when I was in elementary school, I would come into class and history would teach me about World War II. But Captain America would take me there. And I would tell my teachers, last night I was on the battlefield fighting a Red Skull and some Nazis. Mr. Young Man, take your butt to the principal's office. But you don't understand it, because when you think about something, you really do it. When you read a book, or when you listen to a story, you listen to a song, your body reacts, the emotions start going through. My science teacher was like, this guy's crazy. Last night I was flying around the rings of Saturn. Mr. McDaniels, what are you talking about? Me and the Silver Surfer. I knew I was really flying around. So comic books educated me, and it gave me, it put me in tune with my imagination, which I didn't know was setting me up for this hip hop thing. The other thing comic books did to me, being a kid in Hollis, Queens, New York, I went to Catholic school, I got bullied and teased on. When I was reading these comic books, I was in a perfect universe. Well, Marvel took it one step further to set me up to be so dominant on a microphone. Marvel taught me, you define yourself in an adjective, and then you tell the world who you are. For example, if I say the amazing, y'all will say, If I say incredible, y'all will say. If I say mighty, y'all will say. And if I say invincible, y'all will say. So check it out. So now I'm in his comic books, and that's what it's teaching me. You know what I'm saying? And I'm working this out. I'm making believe that I'm doing this. I'm amazing and I'm incredible and all of that. And hip hop comes over the bridge from the Bronx to Queens. So now I'm like, I never wanted to be in show business, but I was like, you could tell stories to music? So I started writing all these rhymes about me. And comic books allowed mild-mannered school kid Darryl McDaniels to transform into the mighty king of rock. The initials of my name is Darryl McDaniels. My initials are DMC. But when I get on a microphone, I'm not Darryl McDaniels anymore. I'm the devastating mic-controlling DMC. Or D's for doing it all of the time. M's for the rhymes that are mine. C's for cool as can be. And I wear contacts so I can see. So comic books taught me how to transform to exist in this universe. And basically how I became DMC with Run, because Run saw I was smart, and he saw I had comic books, and he saw that I had imagination. But really, this is how the DMC thing came about. I was sitting there one day, and I said, Thor is the son of Odin from Asgard. He got a brother named Loki, and he got a hammer. Now, in this world, I'm Darryl. My father's name is Byford. I got a brother named Alfred, and I got a microphone. So I said to y'all in this universe, I am going to become son of Byford, brother of Al. Banner's my mother and Run's my pal. It's McDaniels, not McDonald's. These rhymes are Darryl's, those burgers are Ronald's. I ran down my family tree, my mother, my father, my brother, and me. So those comic books set me up and gave me a platform to, and then I said, I'm gonna be a king. I don't wanna be the king of hip hop because hip hop sucks. I wanna be the king of rock. I'm going for Elvis throat, and I'm going for Mick Jagger's throat. So I wrote the song, I'm the king of rock. And what I'm trying to say is, what people look at us geeks and nerds, they looking past how powerful we are and how we make this world exist. I said, I'm the king of rock. There is none higher. Make and believe that. But now when I walk the earth, people don't call me DMC the rapper. They call me, here come the king. So you might think a lot of pop culture things. My DNA is I Dream of Jeannie, Addams Family, The Monsters, Fresh Flintstones, Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny, Bruce Lee, Kung Fu movies, and all of that. But all of these things that exist, these things weren't created and then you like them. These things exist because you exist. So Marvel let me see that. So I was able to use what was people teasing me, DMC, you're into that corny make-believe pretend stuff. And I look at people and say, you're goddamn right. Because look at the words make-believe, make-believe, make the world believe it, because it does exist. So that was the appeal for comic books for me. Comic books taught me I can really be one of the most badass individuals on the face of the earth. And by having that confidence and not being ashamed, like I never was in a street gang. I never sold drugs. I don't want to get shot because it hurts. When I rhymed on the mic, I rhymed about family. I made a song about Christmas. Me and Ron made a song about Christmas that's more gangster than every rap record ever made. So comic books showed me that we all have a power, and hip-hop gave me an outlet to unleash it.
That is hard to follow. That was awesome. Definitely can't freestyle right now. That was really good. What got which comic got me into comics in the first place? I think characters that were like, actually like Mobius. First comic I ever read was Lieutenant Mike Blueberry, and that was a character that was defending a group of people who were being, demonized and all that, Native Americans, and characters like Hellboy, just comics in general that represented a hero character or an anti-hero character defending a group of people and making a difference and making an impression on our society and culture and everything. I feel like that inspired me a lot. That made me want to do something along those lines and make some kind of a change or a difference in in the world somehow, in some small way.
I mean, I touched a little bit on X-Men before. Like, I think, you know, that was the first thing that as a kid I would read, and like I'd finish and I'd want the next one. I got to have the next story. Like, even though X-Men, we were talking about on the panel earlier today, like X-Men is a story where like they make you invest and make you invest and make you invest, and they rip your heart out, and then they do it again. Like, and it happens every time. Like, terrible things happen to the X-Men. That's kind of their gig. So like the idea of like making these characters that are so engaging, that people relate to so strongly, that like you can tell these stories where, you know, they have to go through these terrible times and these torments, and they come out on top, you know, is a hopeful thing to me. I like writing, you know, comics that have that sense of investment and joy, and I think part of doing it is telling stories where like characters are funny and they have like real character traits in real lives. And I think, you know, I came sort of back around to comics when I was in college with Brian K. Vaughan. It just so happened that like I read at the same time both Runaways and Why the Last Man, which if you guys have read either of those, they do the same thing. Like that man is evil. He will rip your heart out. Like, he will make you really invested in characters, and then do terrible things to them, or have them do terrible things to other people, and switch it all around. I mean, like the end of the first sort of run of Runaways, where, I mean, not to spoil things, but like one of the good guys turns out to be not a good guy, like that you've been relating to this whole time, is like, it's so good. And like, that was one of those things that like reading that, I was like, man, I want to write something that devastates somebody else the way this devastated me. Like, and that, like, I remember distinctly reading the last like volume of Why the Last Man, like reading it in bed next to my wife as she's asleep, and like having to like get up so like I didn't wake her up while I was crying over the end of this like comic, because I was like, this is so terrible. Like, I was just like, this is like 2 a.m, because like I can't stop reading this thing, and I was like, I gotta go read this in the bathroom or something, because like I'm gonna wake her up crying in bed. This is so dumb.
Okay, and we have time for your question, and then
Thank you for taking my question. So we see a lot of comics transferring to the big screen. We see the success of the Avengers series and Atomic Blonde, a lot of graphic novels being translated to the big screen. Do you guys see this as something that harms the industry, or is it an opportunity to bring new comics into the stream, to reach more people, to reach that audience, to tell the stories that have not yet been told? Thank you.
I'm going to be a little biased on this, because I think it is an opportunity to reach new audiences that maybe don't know about comics, don't read comics, don't go into comic shops, because, you know, they're starting to get into places like Barnes & Noble where people can bump into them now. But for the longest time, comics was an industry that was, you know, only sold in sort of specific stores that, you know, people might not have seen, and if they did see, some of those things were obviously not for them. And I think we've seen sort of a renaissance in the last 5 years specifically, where, you know, there's a lot more diverse stories being told. And you know, I just, like, literally just last week, it was announced that like Princeless, my series, is being optioned by Sony. So like, that's the thing I really want to see happen. I really want that to get out there. So my answer is hopeful at this point, because hopefully that actually happens and goes well.
I mean, like that could be its own panel, like to talk about that question, you know, because you have the purists that will say everything that the movies do is wrong and they change it. Then you have totally brand new audiences that never read comics but are into the movies. So I feel like there's no answer for that. It's just like a discussion, you know. It's a big conversation, and there's so many people that see these movies for different reasons and all that it's good for some, bad for other people. But I think overall it's positive, because it is reaching like enormous audiences, you know, these movies.
I agree with that. And also, I mean, it's a different medium. It's completely different thing. I mean, you can develop those characters and those stories even more in the movies. So I would see it as positives too.
I mean, yeah, it's good, it's bad, it's definitely its own panel. We've been approached for movies and the cartoons and the video games, but we said no, because we want to be known for making dope comic books. We want to be known for making incredible comic books. We're only up to issue 3, and we didn't want to jump on the movie bandwagon and take the money and all that. We want to wait till like probably, I don't know, issue 100, issue 200 before we do a movie. Because when we walk the earth, me and my little crew, Edgardo, Miranda Rodriguez, Eric Blamerville, Darryl McDaniels, DMC, and Riggs Morales, we want to walk the earth where people say, yo, they got the dopest comic books ever. Because all that movie stuff, you know, it could be a blessing and a cursing. Like, we could put the video game out now, we could do the movie right now, we could do the Netflix series right now. What we don't want to happen is 25 years ago, y'all go, yo, remember that comic book DMC used to have? Because our vision with this comic book is bigger than me. Because Riggs said, when we first created a comic book, Riggs, my thing was, okay, we're going to create these characters in this universe and we're going to take it to Marvel and DC. And Riggs said, hell no, DMC, you hip-hop. You said you're going to become what Marvel and DC has already been doing. So my view, our vision is 300 years from now, when they say Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Flair Flintstone, and Bugs Bunny, we want the characters and the personalities in this book to be said right up along with the Hulk. We thinking if we jump on a movie bandwagon right now, it's going to destroy it. Because we want to bring people to the comic books. The movies are cool, but 1968, it's like hip-hop. If the music business ends tomorrow, there's still going to be great hip-hop. As a matter of fact, if the music business ends tomorrow, that would be even better for hip-hop, because then we get a lot of crap off the radio and off the record companies. But if the movie business, right, if the movie business ended tomorrow, us in here, we don't need the movies. We don't need Hollywood. That's why us geeks and nerds, we watching you, Hollywood. You better not F this up. We watching them. But if all of that went away, we got the comic books. I don't need Hollywood because I got the artists and writers right up here on stage with me. So my world is eternal. So it's a blessing and a curse. But like I said, as soon as issue 1 came out, all the big studios and ABC, everybody started calling us. We was like, no, I'm not thinking right now. We could have did it, took the payday, but that's not what this is about. This is about something that's special. This is about something that is sacred. And anything that is culturally incredible and artistic and creative, once it becomes commercialized, it becomes diluted and polluted. We want to make sure this entity, this genre, this culture does not get torn down or torn apart the way hip-hop has. I'm a hip-hop guy, but I don't have a hip-hop comic book, but I have a hip-hop attitude. And the real hip-hop attitude is to say, okay, we could take the $200 million now, but I'm not thinking about the $200 million. I'm thinking about the 200 billion people I need to reach first. So that's where I'm at. I'm so pissed off I gotta leave, but like the Terminator said, next year, I'll be back. Thank you. See y'all later. Thank you.
All right, guys. Jeremy, it looks like if you want to, you get to graduate to the technical table.
All right. You might have the first time.
So
But all-
reaching
but-
new audiences, what is actually on the panel description, and we've kind of got into it a little bit with the media, various things. What I wanted to ask you guys, what other media would you like to explore that you would not at the end? Like, would you like a screenplay, or do you want a TV, or
I think, along with visual storytelling, and Vanessa, I think it was us or it was someone else that was talking about it the other day, but the idea of like doing concept art or character design or things for films on that subject, I feel goes hand in hand, and that would be something that I would be interested in exploring someday, is kind of developing the concept and ideas and visuals for an animated thing or a live action film or something, and bringing a comic book idea or a story to life like that would be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I have some interest in things like screenwriting. I'm a little, I think comics may have ruined me from ever writing TV because writing comics, I have to do it all myself. And like, if like the couple times I've collaborated with people, it's pretty like hands off. Like, I'll do this thing, you do that thing. And the idea of sitting in a room full of writers who all have a say on what I'm going to write kind of terrifies me. So like, yeah, even with, you know, even when I do stuff for Marvel, there's a break where it's like, okay, this is kind of what we want. Do you think you can do that? Yeah, I can do that, and I get to go do it. So like, yeah, I'd like to stretch out into more media a little bit, but I think comics is sort of great and unique, and that like I love the sort of act of collaborating with one or a few artists on a book and having that like finished thing that, you know, is ours, and it doesn't also belong to a producer and a director and, you know, 800 other people. You know, we sort of like sat down and built that ourselves.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, having to have so many people edit your stuff and do all that it could be annoying, but it could also be fun because you're working on properties that have so much history and they're so rich, you know, with these characters and stuff. But just my own work, you know, I want to pursue that more in the future, like the fine art stuff, illustrating for things that interest me, and I wrote my own story that I'm working on. So I'm kind of doing both right now. I'm doing commercial stuff and personal stuff as well. So.
If I had to do it all over again, I would probably be a cinematographer. I'd probably go into the film side. I'd probably be a director or something. But that's too late for me now and too expensive. So yeah, I would totally go into that route.
Hey, how you doing? My question is sort of directed mostly from what DMC just said about how comic books influenced him and the characters in comic books influenced him to create the character DMC that he became for hip hop. The flip side to that, do you guys see a flip side to that where like Mr. Bennington from Linkin Park, who just passed away, and several other people who created an image through their music and that character that they created, do you see there being a way to keep their legacy going through comic books too? You know, like Slim Shady isn't Marshall Mathers, you know what I'm saying? But it's his character. And after he's long gone, is there a possibility, do you see there being a possibility where that character or whatever character that these artists created that we have in music and in movies or whatever could be carried on to influence other people as well? So like kind of flip side to what DMC just said about how Thor influenced him to create what he did, and keep that going to inspire more children who 10 years, 20 years down the line won't know who Bennington was, or, well, they will, but, you know, that might not have done their homework on them, but read comic books, you know, or graphic novels. Do you see that being a possibility? Or like Tupac, for instance, who didn't get to finish his journey. Do you see that being something that could be carried on where he left off?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. I think, you know, there's a lot of, you know, specifically there's a lot of comic characters that were created, you know, from some story that people wanted to tell, something they wanted to get out there, like Superman, like, you know, Siegel and Schuster have you know, been dead for a while, but like that idea of having this, you know, this character who represents this sort of hope to, you know, to everybody, but specifically, you know, at that time to, you know, to immigrants, to, you know, young kids who didn't feel like they have a place, you know, is important. And I think that's something that can absolutely, you know, translate to, you know, real life people as well. I think there's been some of that. I think it's definitely something we can do more with. But I mean, right now you see March is like, it's all about the civil rights movement and stuff, and it's sort of captured in this, you know, in the medium of comics. It's got that graphic element to it that, you know, really kind of captures like what it was like to be there. And you know, that's something that kids are like reading. They're reading that comic book in school now on a regular basis.
Right.
And you know, that can carry on that legacy. Not that there's not plenty of other writing out there about, you know, the civil rights movement, but like that's something that kids can see and like see like that real life heroism that, you know, people put out there. And like I don't see any reason that can't extend to artists as well.
And you know, that's a good question because I always wonder like what makes a hit, you know, with anything, a song, a character, a movie, and like you have to have that hit, you know, like Slim Shady, like Tupac. I mean, these are all people and characters that really hit with the masses, that really connect with a large group of people to elevate them to who they are. I mean, you see DMC. I mean, that dude was born to be on stage. You know, like it's obvious. You know, the way he talks and the way he interacts with people. So, like I wonder, you know, and then you know, imagine all the characters that artists and peoples have made that we'll never know of because they just didn't hit. You know, so and I don't think you can really try to do that, or I don't think you can. How do I want to put it? Like force it to happen. I feel like it just will happen. Like Tupac meant to be a legendary MC, you know. Superman, like when they were like they didn't I don't know the creators, you know, Siegel and Shoot, like they didn't know that he was going to be what he is today. They just were like, let me make Superman. They just sat down and did it. They didn't try, they didn't force it. So I feel like characters like that come from people that are born to make those characters that we all connect with, you know, in some way. You know, maybe there's some divine thing being put into them when they're born that they will create a character like that. Because again, DMC, he's different than us. Like you could tell, you know, you could tell. So like we all, not we all, but I feel like certain people have that in them to create that classic, everlasting character or movie or concept.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm just the moderator, but I actually feel very strongly about your question. I think that once you've created something, the art of creation to me is immortality. Because especially with the internet out there, I'm writing a book. I wrote my book. It's out. I die tomorrow. In 100 years, someone might come across that, and then it might become this huge thing. So yeah, I think the legacy of people like Tupac, it's still there. They're not here to go on that journey, but it's forever. It's immortal, and that's never going to stop because of the information that exists out there. We can always find it. There's probably someone today who is writing something that no one will know about for 50 years, 100 years. So
Well,
legacy is a funny thing.
Like a perfect example of that is Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. I don't know if anybody knows about that. Everybody should, though. Marcus Aurelius was the greatest Roman emperor. You know, when Rome was in its highest moment, he was the king, and he wrote. He kept a journal that was never supposed to be published ever. Like it was just his own personal journal, and when he died, it was obviously saved, and you can read it now. It's called Meditations, and it's unbelievable wisdom that he wrote it whenever the Roman Empire was. I don't know the date, 1,000 years ago. Holds up perfectly today. You can read it like it was written today, and it's amazing wisdom. So yeah, you never know what, you know, time is nothing. It's everything, but it's nothing, you know. So yeah, in 1,000 years, you know, who knows where literature and characters, you know, will be.
We might be all on statues. We might be all statues somewhere. Right?
I don't know if I'll be a statue.
You might be a statue, yeah. You could totally be a statue.
Like I feel the freedom of graphic novels and books and comics will allow it not to be diluted like Hollywood is. Like if you, for instance, the Tupac movie, not the greatest depiction of everything.
Right. The
You know what I
source
mean?
material will live on as classic, and then
Right.
you know they can make movies and books and keychains and whatever they want, but that source material will always
Yeah.
be strong.
And the freedom that comics have that movies are limited to, I feel like that obligation could be picked up by them and make it go further than movies ever could. You know what I mean? Well, anyway.
But I was going to add this for the woman who asked the last question about if movies are good or bad. Regardless, I fucking flip out when I see all the CGI stuff that they do in these movies. Like, even if the story sucked, like watching whatever, the Hulk do all the stuff that he does in these movies, I mean, it's bananas. Because I remember as a kid, we just had cartoons and then, He-Man or whatever, just, where, yeah, puppets and stuff. And the stuff they do with CGI nowadays is unbelievable. I saw Valerian the other day. There's no words.
And I think regardless of whether the material is good or bad, if like a movie is good or not, it keeps things relevant. And I feel like that makes things, like you were asking, just live on regardless and is continued to be talked about and reproduced and whatever. So.
Hi. You guys are all amazing. First of all, I have mad respect for you. Danielle, what's your favorite color?
What was that?
What's your favorite color?
Oh. Surprisingly enough, it's pink. And no
Same.
one would ever think that, but it is actually pink.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I've got a quick question for everybody. I just got into comics about a year ago, and I found my way through a typically unconventional character, the new Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan. And what attracted me to her comics was that she was somebody I'd never seen anywhere else. She was a teenage Muslim girl, Pakistani American, just somebody who was really different. So you all are working in the art of storytelling through comics. Is there a character or an aspect of a character that you would like to see that you haven't seen yet? Yeah, that was a little bit of a tough one.
There's been so many stories. That's why it's hard to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, because that's kind of always what I'm trying to do is find, things about characters that are interestingly different. And I think Kamala is a fantastic example of how to make a great new character because she is something you've never seen before, and at the same time, like it's the same, to some extent, she's the same formula that made Peter Parker work. Like she's a awkward, nerdy teenage kid that's super easy to relate to. Everybody, well, almost everybody has been in high school, has dealt with that kind of stuff and been super into something, especially if they're the sort of people who read comic books generally, and like having that aspect to relate to, and then also having these unique aspects which some of the audience may not know anything about, I think is the perfect mix. She's sort of lightning in a bottle that way. What I'd like to see more of comics dealing with in a better way is physical disability, because I think so often the response to any character being physically disabled is to fix them somehow through comic book science. Like if a character is in a wheelchair or loses a limb, they suddenly have a mechanical arm or a jetpack or something like that. And I think having characters that actually have to realistically deal with the sorts of things that real people have to deal with, and are still heroes, are not heroes in spite of this thing, is something I'd like to see comics handle better. And we've been trying to do that with one of our characters in Unstoppable Wasp. We have a character who has alternately crutches in a wheelchair, and that's part of who she is. It's not like what does or doesn't make her a hero.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Come right up onto the mic.
Now you have to ask a question.
First off, I'd like to thank all of you for bringing all these great stories to life and giving us more and more for us to enjoy over the years. My brother and I are working on our own series. It's a action-adventure anime-style novel, and we're boothing here for the first time and just seeing all you guys up here with your success stories and what you've gone through. I was hoping if I could share our series with you, if that would be okay. If you would want to check it out. I have business cards and pamphlets.
Sure, man.
All right. And, oh, you have a question? Oh, I also wanted to ask, in your day and time, who was your hero? Who gave you the strength to, you know, continue on with what you're doing no matter what the hardships were? Thank you.
For me, my answer is my dad, because over the course of a year, my dad went from working, like he used to work full-time in a factory, and his kidneys failed, so he had to go on dialysis, and then he got cancer, which that particular kind of cancer is unique with kidney failure so much that like he had to go like across the country to get treated, so like it was a big deal, and like instead of, you know, this being sort of like the end of things for him, like he couldn't like work at a schedule that they would let him work anymore. They, you know, sort of laid him off, and so like he went back to school. Like he went back to community college, and like he's a teacher at the community college now, and like, you know, that's something he always wanted to do and enjoys a lot more than working in a furniture factory. And you know, he sort of persevered through really the worst possible scenario, and you know, sort of kept going. And compared to that, anything I've had to deal with in my life is nothing. Thank you.
I guess for me, it's been my parents that fed me for a long time, so I was able to do what I do now. So I guess they're my heroes for feeding me and giving me birth, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say the same thing. My parents I grew up in Lebanon. They lived in Lebanon their whole lives. They were in the war and really dealt with a lot from that, and brought us to the U.S. to give us a better life, and to give us the chance to have an opportunity to not live in a war-ridden country, and to have better work opportunities. And I mean, that's a huge thing at the age that they moved. That really means a lot to me now, more than I realized when I was young. And it influenced a lot of the work that I produce and the way that I am. And so, yeah, they're definitely heroic to me.
My parents were always pretty proud of me and stuff, but so I mean, obviously continue to make them proud. But like my grandpa, I guess, you know, would be my answer as far as a person. But at the same time, I just I always drew, so like that was always there, you know, like friends and you know, people would come and go in my life, but drawing was always there. So that like in itself like kind of kept me going, kept me doing it. I think that was kind of part of the question.
First off, I would just like to say that I think it's really cool how you guys are talking about this, and how, you know, it started out as just like a dream when you were a kid, and now you're up at a panel at a convention. And I think it's really interesting, and I want to become an author myself, and it's kind of inspiring. The question I have is, what do you think makes a story forgettable? What do you think is a weak point that someone could do that just makes the story not good?
Cliches, I guess, maybe. That'll be my answer.
It's interesting because I was thinking about this walking through Artist Alley downstairs earlier. I think it's bringing something, like what makes a story memorable is bringing something new and of yourself to what you do, and that goes for art or story, because like there are folks down there and in the comics industry who are really good at mimicking a style, like who are really good at sort of the basic stuff of art, but don't do anything unique. And if you're, you know, the fifth best at doing the house style of, you know, X company, like you can make a living at it, and it's you know, if you're lucky, you might do a story that like people really remember, but it's much less likely than like if you if you bring something original to the table and something really interesting and, you know, of you to a story, you know, you end up with, you know, you can end up being somebody much more like, say, like an Art Spiegelman, who like brings so much of like his family and like even his own like mental issues to the comic, and does, you know, really interesting things with it. You know, not to say that he's not a good artist, but I don't think anybody would be like, he makes the most beautiful this, but like he brings, you know, himself to it, which I think is, you know, more important than, you know, being able to mimic a thing over and over.
I know what you mean, and I don't think I have like a direct answer to that, but I'll just kind of say what it makes me think of is not so much stories, but as far as artwork goes, and you know, I'll walk through Artist Alley at any given con or just online, you know, looking at images online, and I'll see a painting that's really, really good, and I'll be like, oh, that's really good, I like that. But then I might see a painting that's not as good, but I save it, and I like it more. And I always ask myself, like, you know, why is that? And I feel like, you know, style has like a big thing to do with that, and then style comes from kind of filtering life through yourself and then putting that out through your artwork. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's my answer. You know, you don't have to always be like grammatically correct and so technically perfect with anatomy to make good art. I feel like you just got to put yourself into it. And then it's rare that you're going to get a story that's going to hit with like everybody, you know. So something that hits with one group of people, another group of people may not care about it at all. So it's a tough thing, you know. It's a tough line to walk.
Okay, guys, I've done a bad job as moderator because we've gone over our time. So what I want you to do is give a big hand to everyone up here, and thank you for coming to Florida Supercon, and we hope to see you next year.